They say the moment you shift back into human form after years trapped as a wolf is where miracles end. The curse breaks. The beast retreats. Your skin remembers what it means to be soft again. Roll credits. But what no one tells you is what happens in the 3 days after that transformation. When you realize your wolf wasn't a prison, it was a shield. And the Alpha King who saved you didn't break a curse, he stripped away the only thing keeping you from shattering completely. Because sometimes, the cure is the cruelest curse of all. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Forgot How to Be Human. Louise's human hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 days. 72 hours since Alpha King Davian laid his hands on her silver fur and spoke words in a language older than pack law. 72 hours since her bones cracked backward into a shape she'd forgotten. Since her wolf's golden eyes faded into human hazel. Since she screamed with a voice instead of a howl. 3 days since her miracle. 3 days since her nightmare began. She sat on the edge of the silk-draped bed in the king's palace, staring at her fingers like they belonged to a corpse she was wearing. The trembling wouldn't stop. It started the moment she'd shifted back, a violent shudder that lived in her marrow now. The palace healers called it adjustment. The king's advisors called it temporary. Louise called it what it was, her body rejecting itself. "You haven't touched your breakfast, Lady Louise." The servant's voice floated from the doorway, soft, deferential, afraid. Everyone was afraid of her now. Not because she was dangerous, because she was his. The Alpha King's miracle. His proof that even ancient curses could be broken by someone powerful enough. "I'm not hungry," Louise said, and her voice cracked. It always cracked. Human vocal cords. After 7 years of howling, they didn't remember how to shape words without breaking them first. The servant bowed and vanished. They all did that. Appeared like ghosts, spoke like whispers, disappeared before she could focus on their faces. In the 3 days since her transformation, Louise had been surrounded by dozens of people and suffocated by loneliness so absolute it felt like drowning in air. She stood, her legs wobbled, they always wobbled, and walked to the window. The palace gardens stretched below, impossibly green, maintained by wolves who would never be cursed as she had been, who would never know what it meant to lose their human skin for 7 years, only to discover they'd lost something far worse when they got it back. "The blessing is destroying you," a voice whispered in her mind. Not her wolf's voice that was gone, severed like a limb she could still feel phantom pains from. This was her own thought, cold and clinical, and true. Her human body was failing. The healers didn't say it aloud, but she saw it in their careful avoidance of certain words. Readjustment period. Temporary weakness. Psychological integration. All fancy terms for the fact that her human form was killing her slowly, cell by cell, breath by breath. As a wolf, she'd been whole, powerful. She'd run 30 miles without tiring. She'd hunted in winter storms. She'd felt every vibration in the earth through her paws, tasted emotions on the wind, understood the language of growing things. Now, she couldn't walk down a hallway without her heart racing, couldn't eat without nausea, couldn't sleep without waking to the sensation of suffocating in her own skin. Physical consequence, she thought bitterly. The miracle has a cost. A knock on the door, 3 precise raps that could only be one person. "Enter," she said, and hated how weak her voice sounded. Alpha King Davian filled the doorway, the way storms filled, skies inevitable, overwhelming, impossible to escape. He was beautiful in the way ancient statues were beautiful, cold perfection, carved from power and certainty. Dark hair, winter gray eyes, a face that had forgotten how to soften. "You didn't come to breakfast," he said, not a question. An observation. Everything he said was an observation, delivered like verdict. "I wasn't hungry." "You haven't been hungry in 3 days." He stepped inside, closed the door. The room shrank around his presence. "The healers are concerned. The healers can mind their own business." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance. She couldn't tell anymore. As a wolf, she'd been able to read every micro-expression, every pheromone shift. Now, looking at him was like trying to read a book in a language she'd forgotten. "Social consequence," the cold voice whispered. The person who saved you is a stranger. And it was true. For 7 years, she'd known Davian as wolves, knew each other through scent and posture, and the subtle language of dominance and submission that had nothing to do with words. He'd visited her twice during her curse, both times in his wolf form. They'd run together through the northern forests. They'd hunted. Once, she'd fallen through ice, and he'd pulled her out with his teeth in her scruff, gentle despite his strength. She'd known him as wolves knew each other. But humans? Humans were strangers who shared skin. "You're not adjusting well," Davian said, and there was something in his voice she couldn't identify. The transformation should have been complete by now. "Should have been," Louise repeated. "But isn't. Funny how that works. I don't understand your hostility." He crossed his arms, a human gesture that looked wrong on him, too deliberate. "I broke your curse. You begged me for 7 years to find a way. I gave you your human form back. I know." The words tasted like ash. "Then why?" "Because I didn't understand what I was asking for." The words exploded out of her, and suddenly she was standing, shaking harder than ever. Her human heart hammering against ribs that felt too tight. 7 years ago, I thought being trapped as a wolf was the worst thing that could happen to me. I thought getting my human body back would fix everything. I was wrong. Silence. Davian stared at her with those winter eyes, and she saw the exact moment he decided she was being irrational, emotional, human. "You're experiencing psychological integration difficulties," he said, each word careful. "It's normal after." "Normal?" She laughed, and it came out broken. "My wolf is gone. Do you understand that? You didn't break the curse and let me shift between forms. You removed her, severed her. There's a hole in my chest where she used to be, and it's killing me." "That's not possible," Davian said flatly. "The curse forced you into wolf form. I reversed it. Your wolf form was the curse." "No." Louise shook her head, and felt tears burning, human tears, weak and useless. "My wolf form was my response to the curse. She was how I survived it. And you killed her." "Identity consequence," the voice said. "You got what you wanted, but lost who you were." And that was the truth that had been crystallizing over 3 days of trembling and nausea and suffocating humanity. She'd spent 7 years thinking her wolf was her prison. But her wolf had been her salvation. The part of her that was strong enough to endure. The part that could run and hunt and feel the world in ways humans had forgotten. Davian had given her back her human weakness and called it a cure. "I need you to turn me back," Louise said quietly. "What?" "Turn me back. Into a wolf. Please." He stared at her like she'd started speaking in tongues. "You're not thinking clearly." "The transformation trauma." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 3 days," she interrupted. "I'm dying, Davian. This human body is killing me. I need my wolf back." "That's impossible." His voice was sharp now, edged with something that might have been anger or fear she couldn't tell anymore. Couldn't read him. "The spell I used was permanent. One way. It can't be reversed." The words hit her like physical blows. "What?" "I cured you, Louise. The curse is broken. There's no going back." "You didn't cure me." She was shouting now, her weak human voice cracking. "You took away the only thing keeping me alive. You—" She stopped, swayed. The room tilted. Davian caught her before she hit the floor, his hands on her arms, warm and solid and wrong. As a wolf, his touch had been comfort. Now, it felt like chains. "I saved you," he said, and she heard it then. Absolute certainty. He believed it, completely. "I spent 7 years researching ancient magic. I called in debts from every pack on the continent. I broke an unbreakable curse. For you." Louise looked up at him, this beautiful, powerful, absolutely certain man who had destroyed her, trying to save her, and understood. The uncomfortable question, she thought. "I made a choice 7 years ago that I didn't fully understand." Because she had begged him. Every time he visited in those 7 years, she'd howled her desperation, her need to be human again. She'd made him promise to find a way. She'd asked for this. She just hadn't known what she was asking for. "Let me go," she whispered. He did, stepping back like her skin had burned him. "You need rest. The healers will. The healers can't fix this. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold together a body that wanted to fall apart. Because there's nothing to fix. You gave me exactly what I asked for. Then why are you angry? Because... She stopped. Looked at him. This man who had saved her and destroyed her in the same breath. Because I didn't know enough to ask for the right thing. Davian's jaw tightened. I'll send the healers. You need to eat, sleep, give your body time to... There isn't enough time in the world, Louise said softly. He left. The door closed. The silk-draped room pressed in on her like a beautiful coffin, and Louise sat on the edge of the bed, her human hands shaking, and realized she'd made a bargain she didn't understand with a man who didn't understand what he'd taken. 3 days, she thought. I have to find a way to undo this, before this cure kills me completely. But first, she had to understand. What exactly had she chosen 7 years ago, when the curse first took hold? What had she done or failed to do that had led to this moment? The answer, she suspected, would be worse than the question. Chapter 2. The binding nobody explained. The moon rose full and silver, and Louise's body remembered what it could no longer do. She stood at her window as twilight bled into darkness, and felt the pull like fishhooks in her bones. Moon call. The ancient summons that every wolf felt in their marrow. The invitation to shift and run and hunt under the light that made them whole. Except she couldn't shift. Her body tried anyway. The pain started in her spine, a wrenching sensation like someone was trying to pull her skeleton through her skin. Her muscles spasmed. Her jaw ached with the phantom memory of fangs that would never grow. Her hands curled into claws that remained blunt and human and useless. Louise collapsed against the window frame, gasping through the agony of a transformation that couldn't complete. Her wolf was gone, but her body didn't know it yet. Her cells still carried the memory of what they'd been for 7 years, and the moon was calling to a beast that no longer existed. Please, she whispered to no one. To the moon, to the absent wolf, to the god or magic or cruel fate that had led her here. Please, just let me. The door burst open. Davian crossed the room in 3 strides, his winter-gray eyes wide with something that looked almost like panic. What's happening? Moon call, she managed through gritted teeth. Another spasm racked her spine. Body trying to shift. Can't. He knelt beside her, hands hovering over her shoulders like he was afraid to touch her. The healers said this might happen. Phantom shift attempts. It should pass after the full moon cycle completes. Should. Louise laughed bitterly through the pain. Everything should be fine. Everything should be working. But it's not, is it? The spasm released. She sagged against the wall, sweat-soaked and shaking. Davian caught her, his hands finally making contact, steadying her. This close, she could smell him, pine and winter air and something deeper, wilder. His wolf, barely leashed beneath human skin. He still had his wolf. The thought sent a spike of jealousy so vicious through her chest that she gasped. I need you to listen to me, Davian said, his voice low and urgent. There's something I didn't tell you about the transformation spell. Louise's vision swam. What? He hesitated the first time she'd seen him uncertain about anything. The magic I used to break your curse, it required a binding. The word hit her like cold water. What kind of binding? A life bond. The words came out reluctant, careful. The spell needed an anchor, someone to tether your human form to keep it stable while your body adjusted. Someone powerful enough to hold you in this shape, until it became permanent. The room tilted. You bonded me to you. It was the only way to make the spell work. You bonded me to you, she repeated, and heard her voice rising. Without asking, without telling me. You were a wolf. His own voice sharpened. You couldn't consent or understand the terms. I made the choice, I thought. You thought you knew better than me what I needed. She shoved away from him, using the wall to pull herself upright. Her legs wobbled but held. You decided my fate without giving me the information to choose. I saved your life. You bound my life to yours. The words echoed in the silk-draped room. What does that even mean, Davian? What are the terms of this bond you put on me without permission? He stood slowly, and she saw the walls go up behind his eyes, the Alpha King retreating into formality. The bond is temporary. 6 months to a year, until your human form stabilizes. During that time, you need to remain within the palace grounds. Close proximity to me helps strengthen the anchor. Close proximity, she repeated flatly. How close? Within the palace walls. So, I'm a prisoner. You're protected. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration breaking through his careful control. Do you understand what it cost to break your curse? The favors I called in? The debts I incurred? Ancient magic doesn't come cheap, Louise. Every pack on the continent knows what I did for you. They know you're here, under my protection, bound to me. Something cold slithered down her spine. Why does that matter? Because curses like yours don't just break. He moved to the window, stared out at the full moon that was torturing her body. They transfer. Redirect. The magic that held you as a wolf for 7 years had to go somewhere when I severed it. Where did it go? Silence. Davian. Where did the curse go? He turned to face her, and the moonlight caught his face in harsh silver planes. Into the bond, into the space between us. That's why you need to stay close. The bond is containing the curse magic, keeping it from latching onto you again. Or what? Or finding a new host. The words dropped like stones into still water, and Louise understood. Social consequence, that cold voice whispered. The person who saved you becomes a stranger, now that danger is gone. Because the danger never left. He just moved it. You didn't cure me, she said slowly. You just relocated my curse. Trapped it in a bond between us, which means if the bond breaks before your human form stabilizes, the curse will snap back onto you, or onto me. He met her eyes. Probably onto me, since I'm the one who interfered with it. So this isn't about saving me at all. The pieces were clicking together, sharp and ugly. This is about controlling the curse, keeping it contained, and you needed me in human form to do it because a wolf can't maintain a conscious bond. That's not. He stopped. It's more complicated than that. Is it? She laughed, and it came out jagged. You bound me to you without consent, trapped me in the palace, locked me in a human body that's killing me, all to contain a curse that you're just as afraid of as I was. I was trying to help you. Then why didn't you tell me the cost? Her voice cracked. Why didn't you explain that your cure meant binding my life to yours? That I'd be trapped here, in this body, in this palace, connected to you in ways I can't even understand? Because you were suffering. The words burst out of him. For 7 years, I watched you trapped as a wolf. Do you know what that was like? Visiting you, seeing the intelligence in your eyes, knowing you were locked in there with no way out. I promised I'd find a way to free you. I did what I had to do. What you had to do, Louise repeated. Not what I wanted, not what I chose. What you decided was best. Davian's jaw tightened. If I'd asked you as a wolf, you would have agreed to anything, but you didn't ask. No. The word was flat, final. I didn't. The silence stretched between them, thick with truth and fury, and something else. Something Louise was only beginning to understand. Identity consequence, the voice said. You got what you wanted, but lost who you were. Because you never wanted this. You wanted what you thought you wanted. And he gave you exactly that. I begged you to cure me, she said quietly. For 7 years, every time you visited, I howled and whined and tried to communicate with everything I had that I wanted to be human again. Yes. But I didn't understand what I was asking for. She moved away from the wall, each step deliberate despite her shaking legs. I thought being human again would mean freedom. I didn't know it would mean being bound to you. Trapped in a palace, severed from my wolf forever. The bond is temporary, Davian said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Once your human form stabilizes. If it stabilizes. She stopped in front of him. What happens if it doesn't? What happens if my body keeps rejecting this shape? He didn't answer. Tell me, she insisted. What happens if I can't adjust? If I keep getting weaker? If this cure actually kills me? The healers say. Forget the healers. She grabbed his arm, her human hand weak against his strength, but he froze at the contact anyway. What happens, Davian? What happens if I die in this human form you forced on me? His eyes met hers, and she saw the truth before he spoke it. The bond breaks, he said quietly. The curse transfers to me, and I spend the rest of my life as a wolf, while I'm dead. Yes. The word hung between them like an executioner's blade. Louise released his arm, stepped back. Her mind raced through implications, consequences, the cruel geometry of the trap they were both in now. So we're connected, she said. If I die, you're cursed. If the bond breaks early, one of us transforms permanently. We're locked together in this partnership, Davian finished. Yes, I didn't choose this. I know. You gave me no option to refuse. I know. And now we're both trapped. She looked at him, this powerful, beautiful, absolutely certain man who had destroyed them both trying to do the right thing. You saved me right into a different prison. Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or recognition. I thought, he said slowly, that being human again was what you wanted, what you needed. I thought I was giving you your life back. You were giving me the life you thought I should want. Louise moved back to the window. The moon was high now, full and silver and calling to a wolf that couldn't answer. But you never asked what I actually needed. You just assumed. What do you need? The question came out raw. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. I need my wolf back. I need to run. I need to feel whole again. She closed her eyes. But that's impossible now, isn't it? Because of your cure. The spell can't be reversed. Then I'm dying slowly, and you're just delaying your own curse. She opened her eyes, stared at the moon. We're both trapped in a countdown to catastrophe. Footsteps behind her. Davian's presence at her back, close but not touching. There might be another way, he said quietly. Her heart stuttered. What? The witch who gave me the spell. She mentioned alternatives. If the transformation didn't take properly. But they're dangerous. Untested. Louise turned to face him. More dangerous than dying? His winter gray eyes searched hers. Possibly. Tell me anyway. Not tonight. He stepped back. You need rest. Real rest. Tomorrow, I'll take you to see her. You can hear the options yourself, and make your own choice. My own choice, she repeated bitterly. That would be a first. He flinched. Louise, tomorrow, she said. You'll take me to this witch, and I'll hear these alternatives, and then I'll decide what happens to my own life. Agreed? A long pause. Then, agreed. He left. The door closed. And Louise was alone with the moon and the phantom ache of a wolf that would never shift again. But something had shifted tonight. Understanding. Maybe. Or power. For the first time in 3 days, she had information. Knowledge. The beginning of agency. Davian had bound her to him without asking. Had trapped her in a human body that was killing her. Had made choices for her based on what he thought she wanted. But tomorrow, she would hear the alternatives. And tomorrow, she would make her own choice, no matter how dangerous. The uncomfortable question, she thought, staring at the moon. What choice did I make 7 years ago that led to this curse in the first place? And what would I need to understand to make it right? The answer waited in the past in memories she'd spent 7 years trying to forget. Tomorrow, she would start digging. Tonight, she would survive another moon call without her wolf. And that, she was learning, was its own kind of curse. Chapter 3. The moment before the fall. Louise didn't sleep. She sat at the window through the entire night, watching the moon track across the sky, feeling her body attempt transformation 17 times. 17 failures. 17 moments of bone-deep agony as her cells tried to remember a shape they could no longer hold. By dawn, she was hollow, wrung out, more ghost than woman. The knock came with the sunrise, soft, deferential. Not Davian. Lady Louise? A female voice. The king sent me to prepare you for travel. We leave within the hour. Travel. The witch. The alternatives Davian had mentioned. Louise forced herself to stand. Her legs shook but held. Come in. The servant who entered was young, maybe 20, with kind eyes and careful hands. She carried clothing, practical traveling gear, instead of the silk gowns the palace kept trying to dress Louise in. "My name is Thea," the girl said, setting the clothes on the bed. "I'm to accompany you and the king today. You're a wolf." Louise could smell the musk beneath the human skin, the barely contained wildness. Thea smiled. "Yes, my lady. Third rank in the palace pack. Can you shift whenever you want?" The smile faltered. "Yes, my lady." Envy spiked through Louise's chest, vicious and burning. This girl could become a wolf at will, could run on 4 legs whenever the moon called, could feel whole in both forms. Everything Louise had lost. "I'm sorry," Thea said quietly, reading something in Louise's expression. "That was thoughtless of me." "No," Louise shook her head. "It's not your fault I'm broken." "You're not broken, my lady. You're... being polite won't change facts." Louise picked up the traveling clothes, sturdy pants, a wool tunic, leather boots. Clothes for someone who expected to walk, not be carried. "Thank you for these. They're more practical than the dresses." Thea helped her dress, careful not to comment on how Louise's hands shook while fastening buttons. When they finished, Louise looked almost normal in the mirror, almost like someone who wasn't dying from the inside out. "The king is waiting in the courtyard," Thea said. "Are you ready?" "No," Louise thought. "But I'm going anyway." The memory hit her as they walked through the palace corridors, sudden and visceral, like falling through ice into freezing water. She was 20 years old and wearing a dress the color of midnight. The spring equinox celebration at her father's estate. Music and laughter and the smell of wine and roasted meat. She was happy, whole, human, in a way she'd taken for granted. "There you are." The voice made her turn. A man tall, sharp-featured, with eyes like polished amber, beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like admiring a blade. "I'm sorry," Louise said. "Have we met?" "Not yet," he smiled. "But we will." The memory shattered as Thea touched her elbow. "My lady? Are you all right?" Louise blinked. They'd stopped walking. She was standing in the middle of a corridor, staring at nothing, her heart racing. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just distracted." But the memory clung to her like cobwebs, the man with amber eyes. She'd forgotten him, forgotten so much from that night. 7 years as a wolf had made her human memories hazy, indistinct, like trying to recall a dream long after waking. Who was he? Davian waited in the courtyard with 3 horses and a grim expression. He wore traveling leathers instead of his usual formal attire, and somehow looked even more dangerous stripped of royal trappings. "We ride north," he said without preamble. 3 hours. "The witch lives in the Thornwood." The Thornwood. Louise's stomach dropped. That's cursed territory, hence why a witch lives there. He mounted his horse in one fluid motion. "Can you ride?" It was a genuine question. Her body was failing in so many ways. Riding might be beyond her now. Pride made her nod. "I can ride." Thea helped her mount a humiliation. Louise swallowed without comment. The horse shifted beneath her, and for a moment she felt the phantom memory of running on 4 legs, powerful and sure. Then it faded, and she was just a weak human clinging to a saddle. They rode. The landscape changed as they traveled north from cultivated palace gardens to wild forest, from maintained roads to barely there paths. With each mile, Louise felt something loosen in her chest. The palace had been suffocating. Out here, even in her broken human body, she could breathe. "Tell me about the curse," Davian said after an hour of silence. "The original one, how it happened." Louise glanced at him. "Why? You already broke it. Or tried to. Because the witch will ask. She'll need to understand the curse's origin to offer alternatives." The word, alternatives, sent a shiver through her. Hope and terror mixed together. "I don't remember much," she admitted. "That night is hazy." "Try." So she did. The spring equinox celebration. Her father's estate. She was 20 and foolish and so happy. The man with amber eyes introduced himself as Noel. He was charming, attentive. He danced with her 3 times enough to be flattering, not enough to be scandalous. He brought her wine, told her she was beautiful, asked if she'd like to see the gardens under moonlight, and she'd said yes. Gods, she'd said yes. They walked through her father's rose gardens, and Noelle asked her questions about her life, her dreams, what she wanted from the world. I want adventure, she'd told him, wine brave and moonlit. I want to see beyond my father's estate. I want to run wild and be free and, she'd laughed, I sound like a child. No, Noel said. You sound like someone trapped in a life too small for them. It was exactly what she'd needed to hear. They walked deeper into the gardens, away from the lights and music, into the shadowed places where roses grew thorned and wild. Tell me, Noel said softly, if you could have one wish, anything at all, what would it be? She'd thought about it, took it seriously, the way foolish 20-year-olds do when beautiful strangers ask them deep questions under a full moon. I'd wish to be free, she'd said finally, to run without restrictions, to feel powerful instead of helpless, to never be trapped by expectations or duty or… She gestured at her corseted dress, her pinned hair, all the trappings of refined human society. All of this. Noel had smiled. Careful what you wish for, he'd said. And then, what happened next? Davian's voice pulled her back. They'd stopped in a clearing to rest the horses. Thea was checking supplies, pointedly giving them privacy. I don't remember, Louise said. That's where the memory goes dark. I remember wishing to be free, to run, to feel powerful. And then… She pressed her hands to her temples. Then I was waking up in the forest, transformed. Already a wolf. 7 years of my life. Just… gone. Someone cursed you that night, obviously. But curses need catalyst moments. They need the target to make a choice, accept an offer, break a promise. Davian dismounted, moved closer to her. What did you do, Louise? What choice did you make? I don't know. Frustration boiled over. Don't you think I've tried to remember? 7 years I had nothing but time to think about that night, and it's just… blank. Like someone took scissors to my memory and cut out everything after that conversation. Memory manipulation. Davian's eyes narrowed. That's advanced magic. Whoever cursed you didn't want you remembering the terms. Why? Because if you understood the curse's origin, you might find a way to break it properly. Instead of… He gestured at her. This. The choice you didn't understand, Louise thought. What did I agree to in that garden? What did Noel offer me? The witch might be able to recover the memory, Davian said. If you're willing to try. Of course I'm willing. Louise climbed down from her horse, her legs wobbled, but she refused Thea's offered hand. I need to understand what happened, what I chose, because something tells me the answer is the key to fixing this. Davian studied her for a long moment. You're different today, stronger. I'm dying, she said flatly. But I'm dying angry instead of confused. That's something. A ghost of a smile touched his lips there and gone. Anger is useful. Hold on to it. They remounted and rode north. Another memory surfaced, this one clearer. Pain. Transformation. Her bones breaking and reforming. Screaming that turned into howling. The smell of roses replaced by forest loam and fear. And through it all, Noel's voice. You wanted to run wild and be free. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Every wish has a price, Louise. You'll understand that now. Then darkness. Then wolf. Then 7 years of running through forests, powerful and free and absolutely, utterly trapped. We're here, Davian said. The thornwood rose before them. Ancient trees twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Shadows that moved wrong. The smell of magic so thick it coated the tongue. And somewhere in those cursed woods, a witch who might have answers. Or might have more questions. Louise dismounted on shaking legs and stared into the darkness between the trees. Whatever we find in there, she said quietly. Whatever she tells me about the curse, I need you to promise something. What? That you'll let me make my own choice this time. Even if it's dangerous. Even if you think you know better. My life. My choice. Davian was silent for 3 long breaths. Then, I promise. She didn't believe him. But she walked into the thornwood anyway. Behind them, Thea whispered a prayer to the old gods. The trees swallowed them whole. Chapter 4. The Origin Wound. The thornwood didn't follow normal rules. They'd been walking for 10 minutes or 3 hours. Time moved strangely here, elastic and unreliable. The trees grew closer together the deeper they went, branches weaving overhead into patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost like words in a language Louise's human eyes couldn't read. Her wolf would have understood them. The thought sent a spike of grief through her chest so sharp she stumbled. Davian caught her elbow. Careful, don't touch the trees directly. The bark remembers things it shouldn't. Remembers what? Every broken promise that's entered these woods. Every curse. Every fool who thought they could bargain with magic and win. His winter-gray eyes scanned the shadows. The thornwood is built from consequences. Louise pulled her arm free, forced herself to keep walking. Her legs shook with exhaustion, but stopping felt dangerous. The forest watched them. She could feel its attention like pressure against her skin. How much farther? Thea asked from behind them, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. Until we're found, Davian said. The witch doesn't have a house you can walk to. She has a territory that decides whether to accept you. Comforting, Louise muttered. A laugh echoed through the trees, high and clear, and coming from everywhere at once. They froze. Oh, I like this one, a voice said. Female, ageless, amused. The dying girl with the sharp tongue. Come deeper, little wolf who isn't. Let me see what the king has broken this time. The trees shifted. A path opened where none had existed before, narrow, winding, lined with flowers that grew in colors Louise had no names for. Davian stepped forward first. Protective instinct. Even now, even after everything, they followed the path through impossible geometry, turning left 3 times but somehow moving forward, walking uphill in a direction that felt like down. The thornwood played with space the way children played with toys, carelessly, creatively, without regard for what should be possible. Finally, the path opened into a clearing. The witch's home wasn't a cottage or a hut. It was a tree, ancient and massive, its trunk hollowed into rooms, its branches supporting platforms and bridges and structures that grew organically from the wood itself. Living architecture. Breathing walls, and standing at the base of the tree, stirring a pot over a fire that burned blue. The witch herself. She was younger than Louise expected. Or older. Or both. Her face shifted between ages, with each movement 30, in one angle, 80 in another, ageless in between. Silver-black hair that moved like smoke. Eyes the color of honey and amber. And Louise's breath caught. Amber eyes. You, she whispered. The witch smiled. Me, you know each other? Davian's hand went to the knife at his belt. No, the witch said, but she's starting to remember. Aren't you, little wolf? A memory crashed through Louise's mind. Before the curse, before Noel, before everything. She was 19 and crying in a forest she'd run to when her father announced her engagement to a man 3 times her age. A political marriage, a business arrangement, her life signed away like a contract. Running won't change anything, a woman's voice had said. Louise had spun around. A woman stood between the trees, ageless, with honey amber eyes, and a smile that held secrets. Not Noel. Someone else. Someone older. Who are you? Louise had demanded through tears. Someone who recognizes a cage when she sees one. The woman had moved closer. Your father means to sell you to the highest bidder. You'll spend the rest of your life as a decorative wife, bearing children for a man you'll never love. Is that the future you want? No. The word came out broken. But I have no choice. Everyone has choices. The woman had knelt beside her. Some choices are just harder to see than others. Tell me if you could change your fate, would you? Of course. Even if the cost was high? Louise had wiped her tears. Anything would be better than this. The woman had smiled. Careful, child. The universe listens to absolutes like that. Anything is a dangerous word. I don't care. 19 and desperate and so certain. I'd pay any price to be free. The woman had studied her for a long moment. Then, you'll forget this conversation. But when the time comes when you're offered a choice between cage and wilderness, you'll remember what you said here. And you'll choose accordingly." She touched Louise's forehead. Everything had gone white. "You," Louise said again, staring at the witch. "You were there. A year before the curse. You." Understanding crashed over her like cold water. "You planted the suggestion. You made me forget, but you prepared me to accept what Noel would offer. I showed you the shape of your cage," the witch corrected. "What you did with that knowledge was your own choice." "That's not." Louise's hands curled into fists. "You manipulated me. I prepared you." The witch stirred her blue fire, unconcerned. "There's a difference." Davian stepped between them. "You said you could help her, that there were alternatives to the transformation. I said there might be." The witch's ageless eyes fixed on him. "Sit, King. You're blocking my view of the interesting one." "Don't," Davian started. "Sit down." Power laced through the witch's voice, old magic, the kind that predated pacts and kingdoms, the kind that didn't ask. Davian sat. His face went rigid with fury, but his body obeyed. The witch turned her full attention to Louise. "Now, let's discuss your problem. You asked to be cured of being a wolf." The king obliged. "Now you're dying because your human form is poison." "Yes, yes," Louise said through gritted teeth. "And you want me to fix it? To undo his cure and give you your wolf back?" "Yes, but that's not actually what you want, is it?" The witch tilted her head. "If I gave you a choice right now between being permanently human or permanently wolf, which would you choose?" Louise opened her mouth. Closed it, because the answer wasn't simple. As a human, she was dying. Weak. Severed from the part of herself that had felt whole. But, as a wolf, she'd been trapped. Unable to communicate. Unable to connect with other humans as anything but a beast. She'd been powerful, but she'd been alone. "I want both," she whispered. "Ah," the witch smiled. "Finally, we reach the truth. You don't want to be cured of being a wolf. You don't want to be cursed as a wolf. You want what every creature secretly desires. The freedom to be what you choose, when you choose it. Agency over your own form. That's what I asked for," Davian said tightly from his magically enforced seat. "I tried to give her that. The spell was supposed to restore her natural shifting ability. But it didn't," the witch said. "Because you used the wrong kind of magic. You treated her wolf form like a curse that needed breaking. You severed it like a tumor, when what you should have done." She looked at Louise. "Was heal the original wound." "What original wound?" Louise demanded. The witch gestured. The blue fire flared, and images appeared in the flames. A child, 5 years old, with hazel eyes and tangled brown hair. Louise. Before everything, she was sitting in her father's study, watching him burn papers, letters, her mother's things. "Papa, why are you burning Mama's letters?" "Because she's gone, Louise. And we don't keep reminders of people who leave." "But she didn't leave. She died." "Same thing." Her father's voice was cold. Final. "She left us alone. So we forget her. Do you understand?" Little Louise had nodded, even though she didn't understand. Not really. But the lesson had planted itself deep. Love means loss. Connection means pain. The safest way to live is to need nothing. Want nothing. Be nothing vulnerable. That's the origin wound, the witch said softly. Not the curse Noel laid on you. Not your father's arranged marriage. The moment you learned that love and loss are inseparable. The moment you decided that safety meant disconnection. Louise felt tears burning. What does my mother have to do with any of this? Everything. The witch waved her hand. The images in the fire shifted. The spring equinox celebration. The garden. Noel with his amber eyes and dangerous smile. But now Louise could see what she'd missed the first time. The way Noel's eyes flickered to someone else. The way he paused before speaking, like receiving instructions, and in the shadows barely visible the witch. Watching, nodding. Noel had been her instrument, her voice, her hands. "If you could have one wish," Noel said, "what would it be?" "I'd wish to be free," Louise answered. "To run without restrictions. to feel powerful instead of helpless. And in the shadows, the witch whispered words that wove into the spell. Grant her wish. Make her free of human weakness. Let her run forever, powerful and alone. Give her exactly what she asks for, stripped of every connection that could hurt her. No marriage, no duty, no love that could leave her. Just wilderness and strength and perfect, absolute freedom. The curse hadn't been a punishment, it had been a gift. A terrible, literal gift that gave Louise exactly what her wounded heart had asked for. You cursed me, Louise whispered, staring at the witch. Not Noel. You. I granted your wish, the witch corrected. As you asked. As you'd been asking since you were 5 years old and learned that connection meant loss. I just made it literal. You trapped me as a wolf for 7 years. I freed you from human vulnerability for 7 years. The witch countered. You were powerful, strong. You ran for miles without tiring. You felt the earth under your paws and the wind in your fur. You were exactly what you asked to be. I was alone. Yes. The witch's expression softened, the first genuine emotion Louise had seen from her. Because that's what you thought freedom meant. Strength without connection. Power without vulnerability. And I gave you 7 years to learn whether that was truly what you wanted. And now? Louise's voice broke. Now I'm trapped as a human. Dying. Still alone. What was the point? The point, the witch said gently, was to make you answer the real question. Not do I want to be human or wolf. But am I willing to be vulnerable? To connect? To risk loss for the sake of wholeness? She stood, moved to Louise, cupped her face in hands that felt ancient and young simultaneously. Your wolf isn't gone, child. She's just behind a wall you built yourself. The king's spell didn't cure you, it just relocated your fear. Put it in a bond with him, where you'd have to face it. Face what? The fact that being whole means being connected to another person, means risking the loss that terrified you at 5 years old, means choosing vulnerability over safety. The witch released her, stepped back. I can't give you your wolf back, she said. Only you can do that. By accepting the bond instead of fighting it. By letting yourself need Davian instead of resenting him. By choosing connection even though it might hurt. That's not a cure, Louise said hollowly. That's just more pain. Yes, the witch agreed. But it's the only way to become whole. And that, little wolf, is what you actually want. Not freedom from pain. Wholeness, despite it. They were face to. Silence filled the clearing. Davian rose from his seat, whatever spell had held him released. He moved to Louise's side. Is she right? He asked quietly. Is that what you need? To accept the bond? Louise looked at him. This man who'd bound her to him without asking. Who'd tried to save her and trapped her instead. Who was connected to her now, whether either of them wanted it. I don't know, she whispered. But she was starting to suspect the answer, and it terrified her. Chapter 5. The Hidden Observer. There's more you need to see, the witch said, turning back to her blue fire. Before you make any choices, before you decide whether to accept the bond or let yourself die fighting it. Louise's legs threatened to give out. The revelations were piling up too fast, each one heavier than the last. More? What else could there possibly be? The truth about your observer. The witch stirred the flames. The one who watched you for 7 years. Who saw everything you couldn't see yourself. What observer? Davian's voice was sharp. I visited her twice, that's all. In wolf form, yes. The witch's smile was cryptic. But there was someone else. Someone who watched her every day. Someone who saw what the curse was actually doing to her. The fire flared, images dancing in the blue flames. A forest clearing. Louise in wolf form, still young in her curse, still fighting it every day, still trying to force herself back into human shape through sheer will. She was alone. She was always alone. Except she wasn't. In the present, watching the memory through the witch's fire, Louise could see what she'd missed. A figure in the shadows of the trees. Human-shaped. Watching her struggle, watching her fail, the figure stepped forward, and Louise's breath caught. It was Thea. Young Thea, maybe 14 years old, gangly and uncertain, but unmistakably the same woman who'd dressed Louise that morning, the same woman who'd accompanied them into the thornwood. Louise spun toward Thea, who stood at the edge of the clearing, looking like she wanted to disappear into the trees. "You," Louise whispered. "You were there. You watched me." Thea's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I should have told you. I wanted to. But, how long?" Davian's question cut like a blade. "How long were you watching her?" "All 7 years." Thea's words came out in a rush. "My family lives in the northern forests, near where she was cursed. I found her the first week. Followed her. I was just a child, and I'd never seen a wolf like her before. So intelligent. So clearly not just an animal." "You never told anyone," Louise said slowly. "I didn't know how." Thea's eyes welled with tears. "I was 14. I didn't understand what was happening. I just knew you were different. Special. And you seemed so. Alone." The witch gestured at the fire. "Keep watching. The best parts are coming." The memory continued. Young Thea, approaching the wolf Louise carefully, hands outstretched. "I know you're not just a wolf," the girl said softly. "I can see it in your eyes. You're trapped, aren't you? Someone did this to you." Wolf Louise had frozen. For 6 months, she'd been alone. No human had come close enough to speak to her. Most ran. Some tried to hunt her. But this child just sat down. Right there in the clearing. "My grandmother told me stories," Thea continued. "About curses and transformations. About people trapped in animal bodies. She said if you ever met someone like that, you should talk to them. Because being trapped is bad. But being trapped and alone is worse." Wolf Louise had moved closer. Slowly. Carefully. "I can't break your curse," Thea said. "I'm not powerful enough. I'm just a third-rank wolf from a nothing family. But..." She reached into her bag. "I can bring you food. And I can talk to you. So you don't have to be alone. Would that be okay?" Wolf Louise had pressed her head against the girl's hand. It was the first gentle touch she'd received in 6 months. "You visited me," Louise said, memory flooding back in fragments. "Not just once. You came back. Again and again. Every week," Thea whispered. "For 7 years. I'd bring food, and books I'd read to you sometimes. I thought maybe if you heard human words, it would help you remember, help you hold on to who you were. Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I was afraid." Thea's voice rose. "Afraid they'd hunt you. Afraid they'd experiment on you. Afraid they'd make things worse. You were already suffering. I didn't want to add to it." Davian's expression was unreadable. "You knew about her curse for 7 years. You knew where she was. And you never told me, your Alpha King, that there was a cursed wolf in my territory." "I didn't know she was yours to tell about," Thea said quietly. "Not until 3 years in, when you came looking for her. When I realized you'd been searching. And by then..." She looked at Louise. "By then, you seemed calmer. Like you'd accepted what you were. I thought maybe the curse was better than whatever life you'd left behind." "Show them," the witch said, still stirring her fire. "Show them what you saw." The memory shifted. Wolf Louise, older now, more settled in her form, running through the forest with a grace she hadn't possessed in the earlier memories. She was hunting, moving with the kind of fluid power that came from complete acceptance of what she was. And she was happy. Not happy the way humans are happy with smiles and laughter, but content. Whole. At peace with the wolf she'd become. Young Thea watched from her usual spot, and there were tears on her face. "You've stopped fighting it," she said when Wolf Louise approached. "You're not trying to change back anymore. Does that mean you want to stay this way?" Wolf Louise had sat, looked at the girl with golden eyes that held too much understanding. "I don't know if that's good or bad," Thea continued. "If you've found peace, that's beautiful. But if you've just given up..." She shook her head. "I don't know which one I'm watching." Wolf Louise had nuzzled the girl's hand. A gesture that said, "I'm okay. I'm surviving. This is enough." "The Alpha King came again last month," Thea said. He was in wolf form. He ran through the forest, calling for someone. I think he was calling for you. Did you see him? Wolf Louise's ears had flattened. You did see him, but you didn't go to him. Thea studied the wolf's face. Why not? He could help you. He's the most powerful alpha on the continent. If anyone could break your curse. But Wolf Louise had already turned away. Had already started walking back into the deeper forest. Away from help. Away from hope. Away from the possibility of transformation. Because by then, she'd learned. Being a wolf meant being alone. But it also meant being safe from the pain of connection. The origin wound, still bleeding. I saw you turn away from him, Thea said quietly. 3 times over the years, he came looking for you in wolf form, and you hid, like you didn't want to be found. I didn't, Louise admitted. The truth tasted bitter. By then, I'd convinced myself I was better off alone. That needing anyone even rescue was weakness. But that's not why you hid, the witch said. Not really. Tell them the truth, little wolf. Tell them what you were actually afraid of. Louise closed her eyes. The memory was sharp now, crystal clear. I was afraid, she whispered, that if he found me, if he cured me, I'd have to go back to being human. I'd have to face the arranged marriage my father planned. I'd have to be vulnerable again. So I hid. I chose the curse over the risk of connection. Silence. Gods, Davian breathed. You didn't want to be saved. Not at first, not for years. Louise opened her eyes, looked at him. By the time I changed my mind, by the time I started seeking you out instead of hiding it, had been 6 years. 6 years of choosing isolation over risk. And you, she laughed bitterly. You thought I'd been begging for rescue the whole time. But I hadn't been. Not really. Not until the very end. The last year, Davian said slowly. That's when you started appearing where I could find you. When you stopped running. Yes. What changed? Louise looked at Thea. What changed? The memory flickered in the fire. Thea, older, now 19 or 20, sitting in the forest clearing with Wolf Louise. I'm leaving, Thea said, and there were tears on her face. My family is moving to the capital. I'm going to train at the palace. Try to join the King's Guard. It's an opportunity I can't pass up. Wolf Louise had gone very still. I know, Thea continued. I know I promised I'd keep visiting. But this is too important. This could change my whole life. You understand, right? You'd do the same thing if you were me. Wolf Louise had stood. Turned away. Please don't be angry, Thea begged. I have to do this. I have to choose my own life, even if it means leaving you behind. But Wolf Louise had already disappeared into the trees. For the first time in 7 years, she was truly, completely alone. You left me, Louise said to Thea. After 7 years of visiting, of being the only person who saw me, you left. I had to. Thea whispered. I couldn't spend my whole life taking care of a cursed wolf. I had my own life to live, my own choices to make. My own choices to make. I know. And Louise did know. Understood, even. But that's when I realized I'd chosen isolation to protect myself from loss. But loss found me anyway. You left. And I was alone. And being alone stopped feeling like safety and started feeling like exactly what it was. Punishment. So you sought out the king, the witch said. Finally ready to be saved. Finally willing to risk connection. But by then, you'd forgotten why you'd been hiding in the first place. You just remembered the loneliness. And I gave you what you asked for, Davian said. Broke the curse. Made you human. Bound you to me. All the things you thought you wanted. All the things I'd been too afraid to want for 6 years, Louise corrected. And now I have them, and they're killing me. Because I still don't know how to accept connection without it feeling like a trap. The witch clapped her hands, a sharp, sudden sound. Finally, we arrive at the actual problem. Not the curse. Not the cure. The wound underneath everything. You believe love is loss, connection is pain. Needing someone means inevitable abandonment. Because it does, Louise said flatly. My mother died. Thea left. Everyone leaves. I didn't leave, Davian said quietly. Louise turned to him. What? I didn't leave. I searched for you for 7 years. I called in favors from every pack on the continent. I bankrupted my resources, researching ancient magic. I bound myself to you permanently, rather than let the curse keep you. His winter gray eyes held hers. You think I did it out of duty? Out of politics? I did it because I couldn't stand watching you suffer alone. You barely knew me. I knew enough. He stepped closer. I knew you were intelligent and strong, and trapped in a situation you didn't deserve. I knew you were suffering, and I knew that if I could help you, I had to try, even if it cost me everything. Why? The word came out broken. Because 7 years ago, I found a wolf with hazel eyes who looked at me like I was the first person she'd seen in months, and I ran with her through the northern forests, and she was magnificent, and then she fell through ice, and I thought I'd lost her, and the terror of that moment. He shook his head. I've been trying to save you ever since, not because you're cursed, because losing you would break something in me I didn't know could break. Louise stared at him. You care about me, obviously. You've cared about me this whole time. Did you think I bound myself to strangers for fun? His voice held a rough edge. The life bond goes both ways, Louise. If you die, I'm cursed. But the bond also means I feel your pain, your fear, your rejection of everything I tried to give you. For 3 days, I've felt you dying and hating me for saving you, and it's caused, he stopped. It's worse than any curse. Then why did you bind us without asking? Because I was terrified you'd say no. The words burst out of him. Because I'd watched you hide from me for 6 years. Because the one time you finally sought me out, you were desperate and alone, and I thought if I asked permission, you'd refuse. You'd choose isolation again. So I made the choice for you, and I know that was wrong, but I couldn't. His voice cracked. I couldn't lose you, not after 7 years of searching. Silence. Thea had retreated to the edge of the clearing. The witch watched with ancient eyes. And Louise stood frozen, watching her entire understanding of the situation shatter and reform. You love me, she whispered. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. And the bond. It's not a trap. It's you trying to keep me alive because losing me would destroy you. Yes. And I've been fighting it. Fighting you. Choosing isolation again because I'm still that 5-year-old who learned that love means loss. Davian said nothing. Just waited. The witch stepped forward. Now you see it. The real curse. Not the wolf transformation. Not even the life bond. The curse is the wound you've carried since childhood. The belief that being loved means inevitable pain. And until you heal that wound, until you choose vulnerability despite the risk, you'll keep dying. Because your body knows what your mind refuses to accept. Isolation isn't safety. It's slow death. Louise looked at Davian. At Thea. At the witch who'd orchestrated everything. What do I do? She asked. Accept the bond, the witch said simply. Stop fighting it. Let yourself need him. Let yourself be loved. Risk the loss. Choose connection, even though it terrifies you. And if I can't? Then you die. And he's cursed. And the cycle continues. The witch shrugged. But that's always been the choice, hasn't it? Safety in isolation, or wholeness in vulnerability. Death by inches, or life with risk. Some choice, Louise said bitterly. It's the only choice that matters, the witch replied. And deep in Louise's chest, in the place where her wolf used to live, something stirred. Not her wolf. Not yet. But the possibility of her wolf, waiting to see what she would choose. Chapter 6. The bargain you didn't know you made. There's a time limit, the witch said, pouring something dark and viscous from her pot into 3 wooden cups. I assume you've noticed the deterioration accelerating. Louise's hands were shaking worse than ever. She pressed them against her thighs to hide it. How long? 4 days, maybe 5. The witch handed her a cup. Drink this. It won't cure you, but it will slow the breakdown. Give you time to make a real choice. The liquid smelled like earth and iron, and something older. Louise drank it anyway. It burned, going down. But the shaking in her hands eased slightly. 4 days until what? Davian demanded. Until her human body fails completely. Until the bond can't hold her anymore and the curse snaps back probably onto him, since he's the one who interfered with it. The witch handed him a cup. You should drink too. You'll need your strength for what's coming. What's coming? Louise asked. The full truth. The witch settled onto a moss-covered log. You've seen fragments, pieces, but you need to understand the complete bargain you made 7 years ago. Every clause, every condition, every cost. I didn't make a bargain, Louise said. I was cursed. You were given exactly what you asked for. The witch's honey amber eyes fixed on her. But you didn't understand what you were asking for. So let me show you. Let me show you the moment everything changed, not the version you remember, but what actually happened. She gestured at the fire. The flames turned white-hot, then clear as glass. The garden. Roses and moonlight. Noel, with his amber eyes and dangerous smile. But this time, Louise could see everything. She could see the spell woven through the air like silver threads. Could see the witch in the shadows, hands moving in patterns that shaped reality. Could see her own younger self, drunk on wine and desperate for escape. If you could have one wish, Noel said, what would it be? I'd wish to be free, Past Louise answered. To run without restrictions, to feel powerful instead of helpless, to never be trapped by expectations or duty or… She gestured at her corseted dress. All of this. Noel smiled, but his next words Louise could see now came from the witch, spoken through him like a puppet. What if I told you, Noel said slowly, that you could have exactly that? Freedom, power, wildness, but it would cost you something precious. Would you still want it? What would it cost? Your human connections, your social obligations, your safe, predictable life. Everything that makes you weak would be stripped away. You'd be powerful and free, but you'd be alone. Completely, utterly alone. Is that a price you're willing to pay? Past Louise had hesitated, but only for a moment. Yes, she'd said, anything is better than this cage. And in the shadows, the witch had smiled. Wait, Louise interrupted. Stop. Rewind that. The witch waved her hand. The memory froze, then reversed. Play it again, Louise said. The part where he asks about the cost. The memory played. Noel's question. Past Louise's answer. I said yes, Louise whispered. I agreed to the terms. I chose it. You chose what you thought he was offering, the witch corrected. Metaphorical freedom, symbolic wildness. You thought he was speaking in poetry, not literal magic. You didn't understand that stripped of everything that makes you weak meant transformed into a wolf. That alone meant 7 years without human contact. But I still agreed. To a contract you didn't understand, with terms that weren't fully explained. The witch leaned forward. That's the bargain you didn't know you made. You consented to transformation without comprehending what transformation meant. And that half consent, that partial agreement, is what made the curse so powerful and so hard to break. Davian set down his cup carefully. What are you saying? I'm saying the curse wasn't just a spell. It was a contract. Louise agreed to give up her human life in exchange for freedom and power. The magic gave her exactly that wolf form, strength, liberation from social obligations. But because she didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to, the contract had loopholes. Ways out. Escape clauses. What escape clauses? Louise's heart hammered. 3 of them. The witch held up 3 fingers. First, if she could accept the wolf form completely, no resistance, no fighting it, total integration, the curse would transform from punishment to gift. She'd become a shifter, able to move between forms at will. I tried that, Louise said. For years. I accepted being a wolf. I stopped fighting. But nothing changed, because acceptance isn't the same as integration. You stopped fighting, yes. But you didn't embrace. You resigned yourself to being a wolf. But you never loved it. Never chose it with full knowledge and consent. The magic could tell the difference. Louise closed her eyes. The witch was right. She'd been content as a wolf, but never truly whole. Always some part of her holding back, protecting itself. Second escape clause, the witch continued. If someone loved her enough to break the curse for her, not out of duty or politics, but genuine love, the curse could be transferred into a bond. Which is exactly what your king did. Davian straightened. That's why the spell required a life bond. It wasn't just to anchor her human form. It was the only way to break a contract based on isolation. Replace it with connection. Correct. The witch nodded. But here's the catch. The bond only works if both parties accept it. If both people choose vulnerability. If one person fights the connection, the bond weakens. And eventually, she made a snapping gesture. It breaks, Louise finished. And the curse snaps back. Onto whoever's fighting it hardest. Which, in this case, would be you. Except you're already dying. So the curse would probably choose the next available host. The king who dared to interfere with it. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 4 days, Louise said. That's how long I have to stop fighting the bond, to accept it. Or Davian gets cursed and I die anyway. Yes, the witch's voice was matter of fact. But there's a third escape clause, one I didn't mention yet. What is it? The witch's expression shifted, something like pity crossing her ageless face. You could give up something else you love. Transfer the curse to it. Buy your freedom by sacrificing another person to the same fate you've endured. Ice flooded Louise's veins. No. It's an option. Not a good one, but an option. Find someone else, someone you care about, and offer them to the curse in your place. They become the wolf. You go free. The bond breaks. But you survive. Absolutely not. Even to save yourself? I won't do to someone else what was done to me. Louise stood, her legs wobbling but holding. I won't trade my suffering for someone else's. That's not freedom. That's just spreading the curse. The witch smiled. Good. That's the answer I was hoping for. This was a test? Davian's voice was sharp. Everything is a test. The witch stood as well. And she passed. She chose suffering over selfishness, which means she's finally ready to hear the real truth. There's more? Louise wanted to scream. How much more can there possibly be? Just one thing. The witch moved closer, her honey amber eyes serious. The curse has always had one true escape. One way to break it completely, not just transfer it or contain it, but it requires something most people aren't capable of. What? Choosing the thing you fear most. Not despite the fear, but because of it. Walking directly into the wound, instead of running from it. Louise's breath caught. I don't understand. Yes, you do. The witch touched her chest, right where the wolf used to live. You've been dying because you're fighting the bond, fighting connection, fighting the vulnerability that terrifies you. But what if you stopped fighting? What if you chose it? Fully, consciously, knowing exactly what you're risking? I'd still lose him eventually, Louise whispered. People leave. People die. The pain would come anyway. Yes, the witch agreed. But you'd have wholeness first. You'd have the love and connection you've been denying yourself since you were 5 years old. You'd have your wolf back, not as a curse, but as a gift. A part of you that's wild and powerful and free, but also connected. Vulnerable, capable of being hurt. And when I lose him, when the pain comes, then you'll survive it. The witch's voice was gentle, because you'll have learned that loss doesn't destroy you, that you're strong enough to love and lose and keep living. That vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the only thing that makes us real. Tears burned in Louise's eyes. I'm so tired of being afraid. I know. I'm so tired of being alone. I know. I don't know if I can do this. You can. The witch stepped back. But you have to choose it. Consciously. Fully. No half measures. No resignation. You have to look at the bond with the king, at the vulnerability it requires, at all the ways it could hurt you and choose it anyway. Choose connection over safety. Choose love over fear. Choose to be whole, even if wholeness means you can be broken. Louise turned to Davian. He stood silent, winter gray eyes watching her with an intensity that made her chest ache. If I do this, she said quietly. If I accept the bond, If I let myself need you. You have to promise me something. Anything. Promise you won't regret saving me. No matter what happens, no matter how hard this gets. Promise that even if I hurt you, even if this bond is harder than you expected, you won't wish you'd left me as a wolf. Davian crossed the space between them in 2 strides, took her shaking hands in his steady ones. I will never regret finding you, he said. I will never regret binding myself to you. I will never regret loving you, even if it destroys me. Even if you never love me back. Even if this bond is the hardest thing I've ever done. I would choose you again. Every time. Why? Because 7 years ago, a wolf with hazel eyes looked at me like I was the first good thing she'd seen in months, and I've been trying to be worthy of that look ever since. Something cracked open in Louise's chest. Not breaking opening, like ice on a river in spring. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I don't know how to let people love me. I round a day. You'll learn. What if I fail? What if I can't accept the bond in time? Then we fail together. His hands tightened on hers. But we try first. We fight for this. For us. For the chance at wholeness. Louise looked at him, this man who'd searched for her for 7 years, who'd bound himself to her permanently, who'd loved her even when she was a wolf who couldn't love him back. And she made a choice. Not the safe choice. Not the isolated choice. Not the choice that would protect her from pain. The vulnerable choice. The terrifying choice. The choice that might finally make her whole. Okay, she said. I'll try. I'll accept the bond. I'll stop fighting. I'll choose you, even though it scares me. Even though I might lose you. Even though love means risk, Davian finished. I know. The witch clapped her hands. Finally, gods, that took forever. Now kiss her, you fool. The bond needs physical connection to strengthen. And she needs to actually feel that she's not alone anymore. Davian's eyes flicked to Louise. A question. She nodded. He kissed her. And for the first time in 3 days, in 7 years, in 26 years of life, spent afraid of connection, Louise let herself feel it. Let herself sink into the vulnerability. Let herself need someone. It was terrifying. It was excruciating. It was the most alive she'd felt since before her mother died. When they broke apart, Louise gasped, because in her chest, in the empty place where her wolf had been, something stirred. Not fully awake, not yet, but not dead either. Waiting. 4 days, the witch reminded them. 4 days to fully accept the bond, to choose vulnerability over safety, to integrate your wolf through connection instead of isolation. Can you do it? Louise looked at Davian. At Thea, watching from the clearing's edge with tears on her face. At the witch who'd orchestrated everything. I can try, she said. Then go. The witch waved her hand. The path through the thornwood opened. Go back to the palace. Face what comes. And remember, the wound you're healing isn't the curse. It's the belief that love means loss. Fix that, and everything else fixes itself. They left the clearing. Behind them, the witch smiled and stirred her blue fire. Children, she murmured, so afraid of the very things that would save them. But they were trying now. And trying, she knew, was the first step toward transformation. The real kind. The kind that started from inside. Chapter 7. The impossible choice. The ride back was different. Not easier. Louise's body was still failing. Still rejecting itself with every breath. But different. Because now Davian rode beside her instead of ahead. Because now when she swayed in the saddle, he was there to steady her. Because now she let him. That was the hardest part. Letting him help. Every instinct screamed to pull away, to prove she didn't need anyone, to maintain the isolation that had kept her safe for so long. But she fought those instincts. Gritted her teeth and accepted his hand when her vision swam. Leaned against his shoulder when exhaustion threatened to pull her from the horse. Chose vulnerability, inch by terrible inch. We should stop, Thea said as twilight bled across the sky. She needs rest. No. Louise forced the word through cracked lips. Keep going. We're losing time. You're barely conscious, Davian said. But there was something in his voice she hadn't heard before. Not just concern. Something warmer. Softer. Hope, maybe. 3.5 days left, Louise reminded him. We can't afford to waste it sleeping in the forest. They kept riding. The memory came unbidden as the palace walls appeared on the horizon. Not from the witch's fire this time. Just Louise's own mind, reaching back to the very beginning. She was 3 years old. Maybe 4. Her earliest memory. Her mother was singing, a lullaby in a language Louise didn't understand. The words didn't matter. Just the warmth of her mother's arms, the safety of being held, the absolute certainty that nothing bad could touch her here. Mama, little Louise had said, will you always be here? Always, my love. Promise. I promise. 2 years later, her mother was dead. The promise broken, the safety shattered. The first wound opened, and little Louise had learned. Promises lie. Always is temporary. Love ends. Louise. Davian's voice pulled her back. We're here. The palace rose before them, all stone and torchlight, and the weight of expectation she'd been running from since she was 20 years old. Her father's arranged marriage, the life she'd been desperate to escape. Is he here? She asked quietly. Davian didn't need to ask who. Your father? No. He returned to his estate years ago. After you disappeared. He thought you'd run away to avoid the marriage. Or that you'd been killed by bandits. He doesn't know about the curse. Good. The word came out harder than she intended. I don't want to see him. You'll have to eventually. Once you're stable. He's still your father. He stopped being my father the day he tried to sell me like property. Louise dismounted. Her legs buckled immediately. Davian caught her before she hit the ground. He chose politics over my well-being. Made decisions about my life without asking what I wanted. Just like, she stopped. Looked up at Davian's face, inches from hers. Just like I did. He finished quietly. I know. I'm sorry. The apology surprised her. That wasn't fair. You're not him. You were trying to help. He was trying to profit. But the result was the same. I took your choice away. Davian set her on her feet but didn't let go. I should have found another way. Should have asked. Should have trusted you to make your own decision about the bond. I would have said no. I know. That's why I didn't ask. He smiled, sad and small. Not my finest moment, but you're letting me choose now. Louise's hands found his chest, steadied herself against him. You're giving me information, options, agency. That's different. It's the bare minimum of what you deserve. Maybe. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder, too exhausted to hold herself upright anymore. But it's more than I've gotten from most people. He lifted her effortless, despite her being fully grown. Carried her like she weighed nothing. Like she was precious. Don't. She protested weakly. Don't what? Don't help you? Don't care that you're dying? Don't touch you? His voice held an edge. Which vulnerability am I supposed to ignore? The words hit like cold water. Because that was what she was doing, asking him to ignore her need. To pretend she was fine. To let her maintain the illusion of independence even as her body gave out. I hate this, she whispered. I know. I hate needing you. I hate that I can't even walk to my room without help. I hate that accepting the bond means admitting I'm not strong enough alone. Needing someone doesn't make you weak. He carried her through the palace doors, servants scattered like startled birds. It makes you human. But I don't want to be human. That's the problem. Being human is what's killing me. No. Davian's arms tightened around her. Refusing to be vulnerable is what's killing you. There's a difference. They reached her chambers. He set her on the bed silk sheets that felt like a mockery of comfort. Thea appeared with water and food, and the kind of gentle efficiency that came from years of service. The healers will be here within the hour, Thea said. They need to examine you after the journey. Tell them not to bother. Louise's voice was hollow. They can't fix what's wrong with me. Maybe not, but they can make you more comfortable while you heal yourself. Thea knelt beside the bed. Lady Louise, I need to tell you something. About why I came to the palace. Why I joined the King's Guard. Thea, you don't have to. I followed you here. The words came out in a rush. A year ago, when you finally let the king find you. I knew he'd bring you to the palace once he broke the curse. So I arranged to be here, applied for a position, made sure I'd be close enough to see what happened to you. Louise stared at her. Why? Because for 7 years, you were the most important thing in my life. Thea's eyes welled. I was 14 when I found you. Lonely. Lost. My family was struggling. I had no friends, no purpose, no idea who I was. But every week, I'd visit you, and you needed me. You were this powerful, intelligent, beautiful creature, trapped in an impossible situation, and I could help. I could bring you food and read to you, and just be there. For the first time in my life, I mattered to someone. You did matter. Louise's throat tightened. You kept me sane. You gave me a reason to hold on to my humanity. But then I left you, chose my own future over staying with you, and I've felt guilty ever since. Tears spilled down Thea's face. So I came here, to make sure the cure worked, to make sure you were okay, to somehow make up for abandoning you when you needed me most. You didn't abandon me. Louise reached out, her shaking hand found Thea's. You chose your own life. That's not abandonment. That's self-preservation. And I don't blame you for it. But you were alone because of me. I was alone because of me. The truth settled in Louise's chest, heavy and undeniable. I spent my whole life pushing people away, terrified of the pain that comes with connection. You were the first person in years who got close, and when you left, I told myself it proved I was right, that everyone leaves, that isolation is safer, but that wasn't fair to you. You're allowed to have your own life, your own choices. Love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. Then what does it mean? Thea's question was raw. Louise looked at Davian, standing by the window, watching them with quiet intensity. I think, she said slowly, it means choosing someone anyway, even knowing they might leave, even knowing it might hurt, even knowing nothing lasts forever. Choosing connection despite the risk, not because you're guaranteed a happy ending, but because wholeness requires vulnerability. The words felt strange in her mouth, true but unfamiliar, like speaking a language she was just learning. That's terrifying, Thea whispered. Yes, Louise squeezed her hand, but I'm starting to think the alternative is worse. The healers came, examined her, confirmed what everyone already knew. Her human body was failing. 3 days, maybe less. Then the bond would break and the curse would transfer, probably to Davian. After they left, Louise lay in the silk sheets and stared at the ceiling and faced the impossible choice. 3 options, just like the witch said. Option 1, the safe option. Accept the consequence. Learn to live with dying. Let herself fade away peacefully, breaking the bond naturally. Davian would be cursed, would spend the rest of his life as a wolf, but she'd be gone, dead, unable to watch him suffer. Safe. Painless. Cowardly. Option 2, the heroic option, fight the bond. Reject the vulnerability. Try to break free of Davian's connection and face the curse alone. Maybe force it back onto herself. Let herself become a wolf again. Live alone in the forest, powerful and isolated, and exactly where she'd started. Brave. Independent. Lonely. Option 3, the unthinkable option. Accept the bond completely. Stop fighting. Let herself love Davian fully, consciously, knowing he would probably leave someday through death or choice or the simple passage of time. Risk everything. Be vulnerable. Choose connection, even though it meant choosing pain. Terrifying. Impossible. The only real option. I can hear you thinking from here, Davian said from his post by the window. Tell me what you're deciding. Whether I'm brave enough to love you, Louise said simply. Silence. Then, and? I don't know yet. She turned her head to look at him. Tell me honestly. If I do this, if I accept the bond, if I let myself need you, what happens when you leave? When you die, when this ends, then you'll grieve. He moved to the bed, sat on the edge. You'll hurt. Maybe for a long time. Maybe forever. But you'll survive it. Because you'll have learned that love doesn't destroy you. Loss doesn't erase you. You're strong enough to be broken and still keep living. How do you know? Because you already survived 7 years as a wolf. You already survived thinking you'd lost your humanity forever. You already survived me binding you to myself without permission. You're stronger than you think, Louise. Strong enough to risk this. What if I'm not? Then I'll be strong for both of us. His hand found hers. Until you remember your own strength. Until you believe you can survive whatever comes. I'll hold the bond steady. I'll keep loving you even when you can't love yourself. I'll be the connection you're too afraid to accept until you're ready to accept it. That's not fair to you. I don't care about fair. I care about you surviving. His winter gray eyes held hers. So choose, Louise. Choose safety and die. Choose isolation and live alone. Or choose me. Choose vulnerability. Choose the terrifying possibility that love might actually be worth the risk. Her heart hammered. Her hands shook. Her body screamed that time was running out. 3 days, 3 options. One choice that would determine everything. Louise closed her eyes, reached deep into herself, past the fear and the old wounds and the voice that said, love means loss. Reached for the place where her wolf used to be, and found her there. Waiting, not gone, just sleeping. Just waiting to see what Louise would choose. What do I do? She asked the wolf. What you've always been too afraid to do, her wolf answered. Be whole, be vulnerable, be brave enough to let someone love you. Louise opened her eyes, looked at Davian, and made her choice. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I choose you. I choose the bond. I choose vulnerability, even though it terrifies me. I choose to risk loss for the chance at wholeness. I choose me, Davian finished. You choose me. Yes, he kissed her. And this time, Louise didn't just let it happen. She kissed back, poured everything into it, her fear and her hope and her desperate, terrified choice to be vulnerable anyway. In her chest, her wolf stirred, woke, began to heal. 3 days, Louise said when they broke apart. We have 3 days to make this bond strong enough to hold, to accept the connection fully, to integrate my wolf through vulnerability instead of isolation. Then we'll use every second. Davian's forehead pressed against hers. No more running, no more hiding, no more pretending you don't need me. No more pretending, she agreed. And for the first time since her mother died, Louise let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to mean loss. Maybe it could mean wholeness instead. She had 3 days to find out. 3 days to heal the wound that had been bleeding for 21 years. 3 days to become whole. Hit subscribe if you're rooting for Louise to survive this, because she's running out of time and she needs people who believe healing is possible, even when it feels impossible. Comment below if you've ever had to choose between safety and wholeness, between dying slowly alone, or living dangerously connected. Tell me which one terrifies you more, because Louise is about to find out if vulnerability is worth the risk. Chapter 8. The Confrontation with Truth. The first day was agony. Not physical, though. Louise's body still trembled and failed, but emotional. Every moment of accepting help felt like skinning herself alive. Every time Davian touched her, every time she let him see her weakness, every time she chose vulnerability over safety, something inside her screamed to run. She stayed anyway. They spent the day in her chambers. Davian brought her food himself, refused to let servants do it. Sat with her while she ate, watched her with quiet intensity. Why are you staring? She asked, her voice still cracking. Because I've wanted to do this for 7 years. Just sit with you, talk to you, know you as more than a wolf who couldn't answer back. I'm not very interesting as a human. You're wrong. He leaned forward. Tell me something. Anything. Something I don't know. Louise thought about it. I hate roses. He blinked. What? Roses. I hate them. They remind me of that night. Of Noel and the curse and... She shook her head. My father's entire estate was covered in them. I used to love them. Now I can't look at them without feeling sick. Then I'll have every rose in the palace gardens removed. Don't be ridiculous. You can't destroy your gardens because I have bad memories. Watch me. He stood. I'll give the order today. Davian. You chose vulnerability. I choose action. This is what connection looks like, Louise. Your pain matters to me. Your fears matter. If roses hurt you, they're gone. Something cracked in her chest. Not breaking. Softening. Thank you, she whispered. He kissed her forehead. Gentle, reverent. Tell me what else you need. So she did. And he listened. And slowly, painfully, she learned what it felt like to be heard. In her chest, her wolf stirred, strengthened, whispered. More. Keep going. The second day was harder. Because the vulnerability was working, she could feel it, the bond strengthening, her wolf waking, her body starting to remember how to hold both forms. But with the healing came the fear, the absolute terror that this was temporary, that Davian would leave, that she'd lose him and be destroyed by it. The panic attack hit at dawn. She woke gasping, her human heart racing. Phantom sensations of transformation ripping through her, but worse than the physical pain was the emotional flood, grief and terror and the absolute certainty that loving Davian meant inevitable loss. He woke instantly. Louise, breathe. I'm here. You won't always be here. The words came out broken. You'll die, or leave, or stop loving me, and I'll be alone again. And it will hurt worse than anything, because I let myself need you. I let myself… Hey. He caught her face between his hands. Look at me. Stay with me. I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. I thought I could choose vulnerability, but I'm not. You are. His voice cut through the panic. You are strong enough. You're doing it right now. Letting me see you afraid. Letting me hold you through this. That's vulnerability. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like dying. That's because the old you is dying. His thumbs brushed away her tears. The isolated, protected, alone version of you. She's dying so the whole version can live, and it's terrifying. But I'm here. I'm not leaving. Not today. But someday I might die. Someday you might die. Someday the world might end. His forehead pressed against hers. But today, right now, we're both alive, both here, both choosing this. Can you stay in today? Can you let tomorrow be tomorrow's problem? Louise's breath shuddered. I can try. Then try. Just for today. Just for this moment. Be here with me. Be afraid if you need to. But don't run from it. Don't run from me. So she didn't run. She shook and cried, and let him hold her through the terror. Let herself be seen at her most broken. Let herself need him. And somehow, she survived it. In her chest, her wolf whispered, Stronger. You're getting stronger. The third day was different. Louise woke before dawn and realized something had changed. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breath came easier. Her body felt less like a stranger and more like something she recognized. The bond was working. Davian, she whispered. He stirred beside her. He'd been sleeping in a chair by her bed, refusing to leave her alone. What's wrong? Nothing, I think. She sat up slowly, her legs held. I think I'm healing. He was awake immediately. Watching her stand, walk to the window, move without stumbling. Your wolf? She's there, not fully integrated yet, but there, waiting. I can feel her. Louise pressed her hand to her chest. The bond is holding us together, human and wolf, connected through vulnerability instead of isolation. Davian crossed the room, stood behind her, didn't touch her yet, just present. What do you need? To go back. The words surprised her. To the place where it started, the garden where Noel cursed me. I need to see it again, face it. But this time, with full knowledge, with you beside me, with the choice to accept or reject what happened. That's your father's estate, 3 hours ride. I know. She turned to face him. Will you take me? Now? You're still healing. The bond isn't stable yet. If something goes wrong, then we face it together. She took his hands. I need to do this, Davian. I need to return to the beginning. Need to confront the moment everything changed. Not to change it, I know I can't, but to accept it. To choose it, consciously. Now that I understand what I was really choosing. He studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod. We leave within the hour. They rode in silence, Thea accompanying them again. The estate appeared on the horizon, overgrown now, abandoned. Her father had left years ago, unable to live in the place where his daughter disappeared. Louise dismounted in front of the rose gardens. The flowers had gone wild, thorns overtaking everything. Beautiful and vicious, and exactly how she remembered. "This is where it happened," she said quietly. "Where I wished for freedom and got a curse instead." Davian stood beside her. "You don't have to go in there." "Yes, I do." She stepped forward. The roses seemed to reach for her, thorns catching on her clothes. She pushed through anyway. The deeper she went, the more the memories sharpened. Not the witch's fire visions. Her own memories, returning now that she was strong enough to face them. She reached the center of the garden, the place where Noel had stood, where she'd made her wish. "I stood here," she said, "and I was so desperate, so trapped, so certain that anything was better than the life my father had planned for me. And I wished for freedom without understanding what freedom costs." Davian's hand found hers. "What does it cost?" "Everything." She looked at him. "Real freedom isn't isolation. It's not being powerful and alone. It's choosing who you connect with. Accepting that connection means risk. That love means potential loss. That vulnerability is the price of wholeness. And now? Knowing that, would you make a different choice?" Louise closed her eyes. Felt her wolf stir in her chest. Felt the bond humming between her and Davian. Felt the weight of 7 years and the lightness of healing. "I would choose differently," she said slowly. "Not to avoid the curse, I needed those 7 years. Needed to learn what isolation truly costs. Needed to understand that strength isn't the same as independence. But I would choose consciously. Would say, I want freedom that includes connection. Power that includes vulnerability. Wildness that includes love. You can say it now." She opened her eyes. "What?" "Make the choice now. The real choice. With full knowledge." Davian turned her to face him. "Tell the universe what you actually want. Not what you think you should want. Not what you're afraid to want. The truth." Louise's heart hammered. Because this was it. The moment. The confrontation with truth that the witch had promised. She looked at the roses. At the place where everything changed. At Davian, who'd loved her even as a wolf. At Thea, watching from the garden's edge. And she spoke her truth. "I want to be whole," she said clearly. "Human and wolf, connected and wild, strong and vulnerable. I want to love Davian even though I might lose him. I want friends, even though they might leave. I want connection, even though it might hurt. I want to risk everything for the chance at wholeness. Because isolation isn't safety, it's slow death, and I'm done dying." The words echoed in the garden, and something shifted. Not the world. Her. In her chest, her wolf surged forward, not attacking, not fighting, but integrating, merging with her human form, becoming part of her instead of separate from her. Louise gasped. Her body remembered. Bones and muscles and cells all aligning, all accepting, all choosing wholeness over separation. "Davian." Her voice shook. I think it's working. I can feel her. My wolf. She's not gone. She's part of me. We're whole," her wolf finished. "Finally, blessedly whole." "Try it," Davian said. "Try to shift. What if I can't? What if?" "Try anyway." So she did. She reached for her wolf not with desperation or fear, but with acceptance, with love. With the understanding that her wolf wasn't a curse or a cure, but part of who she was, part of what made her whole. And her body responded. The transformation was nothing like the curse. No pain, no breaking. Just a smooth, natural shift from one form to another. Human to wolf, skin to fur, 2 legs to 4. She stood in the garden as a wolf, golden eyes bright, silver fur gleaming, and felt complete for the first time in 7 years. I can shift, she thought in wonder. I have both forms. I'm whole. Davian knelt before her, winter gray eyes wet with tears. Hello, beautiful. I've missed you. Wolf Louise pressed her head against his chest. Then, testing, she shifted back. Human again, smooth and easy and perfect. It worked, she whispered. The bond, the vulnerability, the choice to connect. It worked. You worked. He pulled her close. You chose wholeness. Chose love. Chose to be brave enough to risk everything. I'm still afraid, she admitted. I'm still terrified I'll lose you. You will lose me someday. I'll die. Or you will. That's the cost of connection. He kissed her forehead. But until then, we have this. We have now. We have each other. And that's worth the risk. Louise looked around the garden. The roses that used to terrify her now just looked like flowers. The place where she'd been cursed now felt like the place where she'd been freed. Not 7 years ago. Today, I need to see her, she said suddenly. The witch, I need to thank her. For cursing you? For teaching me. Louise smiled her first real smile in days. For showing me that freedom isn't isolation. That strength includes vulnerability. That wholeness requires risk. Davian stood, helped her up. Then we'll find her. After you rest. After you stabilize fully. After I learn to live as a shifter instead of as a cursed wolf or a dying human. She took his hand. After I figure out what wholeness actually means. They walked out of the garden together. Behind them, the roses swayed in the wind. And somewhere, in a clearing in the thornwood, a witch smiled and stirred her blue fire. Finally, she murmured. Finally, the child learns. The curse was broken. Not by magic. Not by power. Not by rescue. By choice. By vulnerability. By the courage to love despite the risk of loss. The story should have ended there. But as Louise would learn, endings are just beginnings wearing different clothes. And the real work learning to live whole was only just starting. Epilogue. The uncomfortable piece. They tell you that the moment you shift back into human form after years trapped as a wolf is where miracles end. The curse breaks. The beast retreats. Your skin remembers what it means to be soft again. Roll credits. They're wrong. That's where you begin to learn what you actually chose. Louise stood at the palace window, watching the first snow of winter fall. Her reflection looked back at her human today, though she'd been a wolf this morning. She shifted twice daily now, sometimes more. Not because she had to, but because she could. Because wholeness meant having both forms, using both, being both. Learning to live with choice after years of having none that was its own kind of challenge. You're thinking too loud again, Davian said from the doorway. She smiled without turning. 6 months, and she could still feel the bond between them. A warm, steady presence in her chest. Not a chain. Not a trap. Just connection. Just knowing someone else existed in the world and cared whether she did. Thea's leaving tomorrow, Louise said quietly. I know. He crossed the room, stood beside her. She told me this morning. Her family needs her. Her brother is sick. I asked her to stay. The admission came easier than it would have months ago. Told her we could send healers, money, whatever her family needs. But she wants to go herself. Wants to be there. And how do you feel about that? Louise considered. 6 months ago, the answer would have been simple. Abandoned. Betrayed. Proof that everyone leaves. But now, sad, she said honestly. I'll miss her, but also, proud? She's choosing her family, making her own decision about who to care for and how. That's not abandonment, that's just life. Davian's arm wrapped around her waist. You've learned a lot in 6 months. I've had a good teacher. She leaned into him, let herself be held, still strange, sometimes, still uncomfortable, but also necessary. Though you're not perfect, you still try to make decisions for me when you think you know better. I'm working on it, I know. She turned in his arms, looked up at him. Just like I'm working on not pulling away every time I get scared. On not assuming every goodbye is permanent. On believing that loss doesn't destroy me. How's that going? Some days better than others. She touched his face, traced the line of his jaw. Today is a good day. Ask me tomorrow when Thea actually leaves. He kissed her slow and gentle and sure. 6 months, and it still sent heat through her. Still made her want to run and stay in equal measure. She stayed. Always. Now, she stayed. Later, they walked through the gardens together. The roses were gone, just as Davian had promised. In their place, winter jasmine, hardy and blooming despite the cold. Louise had chosen them herself. Flowers that thrived in harsh conditions, that bloomed when everything else died back. She understood the metaphor. Your father sent another letter, Davian said carefully. Louise's jaw tightened. What does he want this time? To see you. To apologize. To ease his guilt. She stopped walking. I'm not ready. I know. Maybe I'll never be ready. That's allowed. Davian's voice was steady. You get to choose who's in your life, Louise. Even if they're family. Even if they regret what they did. You're not obligated to forgive people who hurt you just because they've decided they feel bad about it. Relief flooded through her. You mean that? Of course I mean it. He pulled her close. I spent 7 years learning who you are. I know you need time. Need space. Need to process things at your own speed. I'm not going to push you to reconcile with someone who tried to sell you like property, no matter how much he regrets it now. Thank you, she whispered into his chest. They stood there as snow fell around them, 2 people learning how to be whole together. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. And real, Louise was learning, was better than safe. That evening, she found Thea in her quarters, packing. I wasn't going to leave without saying goodbye, Thea said, before Louise could speak. I know you hate goodbyes, but I wouldn't do that to you. I know. Louise sat on the bed, watched Thea fold clothes with practiced efficiency. I'm scared, she admitted, that this is like before, that you're leaving and never coming back. That I'm losing you. You're not losing me. Thea stopped packing, turned to face her. I'm going home for a while, but I'll visit. I'll write. We'll stay connected. It's not the same as 7 years ago, Louise. We're both different now. How? I'm not a lonely 14-year-old who doesn't know who she is. I'm 21. I have a career, a purpose, a life of my own. Thea smiled. And you're not a cursed wolf who can't communicate. You're a person. A shifter. Someone who has other friends, other connections. You'll miss me. But you won't be alone. The words settled something in Louise's chest. Because Thea was right. 6 months ago, losing Thea would have destroyed her. Now, it would hurt. But she'd survive, because she had Davian, had the palace guards she'd befriended, had the shifter community she was slowly integrating into, had a life instead of just existence. I'll miss you anyway, Louise said. Good. Thea crossed the room, hugged her tightly. Miss me. Be sad. Feel it. Then keep living. That's what healthy people do. They feel loss without being destroyed by it. When did you get so wise? I've been reading the books in the palace library. Turns out there's a whole section on processing grief and attachment. Thea pulled back, grinned. Who knew? Louise laughed real laughter, the kind that came from joy instead of bitterness. Write to me. Tell me about your brother. About your family. About your life outside this palace. I will. And you write back. Tell me about learning to be a shifter. About Davian. About whether you ever reconcile with your father. If I ever reconcile with my father. When you're ready. Thea corrected gently. No pressure. No timeline. Just, when you're ready. They said their other goodbyes the next morning. Louise stood in the courtyard and watched Thea ride away, and felt the grief settle over her like a heavy cloak. But underneath the grief, gratitude, love, the knowledge that this goodbye wasn't forever. Just see you later. Davian stood beside her, solid and present. You okay? No, Louise said honestly. But I will be. Yes, he agreed. You will be. Louise received her first letter from Thea in March. Her brother was recovering. Her family was grateful. She missed the palace but was happy at home. She'd met someone, a boy from the neighboring pack. Nothing serious yet, but maybe someday. Louise wrote back immediately. Told her about the spring thaw, about learning advanced shifting techniques, about the nightmare she'd had where everyone left and she couldn't shift back to human form, about how Davian had held her through it, reminded her it was just a dream, helped her breathe. She didn't mention that she'd finally replied to her father's letters, that she'd agreed to meet him, that the meeting had been awful and uncomfortable and absolutely necessary. That would be in the next letter. The anniversary of her cure fell on a warm summer evening. Louise marked it by shifting into wolf form and running through the northern forests, the same forests where she'd spent 7 years cursed. Davian ran beside her, wolf-formed and powerful. They hunted together, played, rested by a stream as the sun set. When they shifted back to human, Louise spoke first. "Do you ever regret it? Binding yourself to me?" Davian was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want the diplomatic answer, or the honest one?" Her heart clenched. "Honest. Sometimes." He met her eyes. "Not binding myself to you, I'd do that again in a heartbeat. But I regret doing it without asking. I regret taking your choice. I regret that we started with me forcing connection instead of you choosing it. But we're here now. We chose each other eventually." "We did." He touched her face. "But I carry the guilt of how we started. The knowledge that I hurt you trying to help you. That's my burden to bear, Louise. Not yours. You don't have to forgive me for it." "I do forgive you." The words surprised her. "I'm still angry sometimes, still wish you'd asked, still processing the violation of agency. But I forgive you, because you learned, changed, started letting me make my own choices. And that matters more than where we started." "Thank you," he said quietly. They sat in silence as stars emerged overhead, two people learning to love each other despite messy beginnings, despite fears and wounds and all the ways they'd hurt each other. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Louise stood in the thornwood, facing the witch who'd orchestrated everything. "I came to say thank you," she said simply. The witch, ageless as ever, smiled. "For cursing you? For teaching me." Louise gestured at herself human today, but with her wolf just beneath the surface, integrated and whole. "For showing me that freedom isn't isolation, that strength includes vulnerability, that wholeness requires risk. You learned well. I'm still learning." Louise sat on the moss-covered log. "Some days are harder than others. Some days I wake up terrified that Davian will leave, that everyone will leave, that I'll end up alone again, and I let myself feel the fear. Then I get up anyway. I choose connection despite the fear. I choose vulnerability despite the risk. I choose wholeness even though it means I can be broken." "And are you broken?" Louise considered. Broken and whole at the same time, wounded and healing, afraid and brave, human and wolf, connected and independent. All of it. All at once, uncomfortable and real and alive. The witch nodded. "That's what I hoped you'd learn. That life isn't about choosing safety over pain. It's about accepting that both exist. That wholeness includes discomfort. That being alive means being vulnerable." "Someone asked me yesterday," Louise said slowly, "knowing what I know now, would I choose differently? Would I avoid the curse if I could? What did you answer?" "I said I'd choose with my eyes open." Louise stood, preparing to leave. "I'd still make mistakes, still get hurt, still risk everything for connection. But I'd do it consciously, knowing the cost, accepting the price, because the alternative, safety through isolation, isn't really living, it's just surviving. And I'm done. Just surviving." The witch's smile was genuine, warm. "Then my work is complete." "Is it?" Louise tilted her head. "Or are there other cursed wolves out there? Other people trapped by their own fears? Other children who need to learn that love doesn't have to mean loss? Perhaps." The witch's eyes gleamed. "But that's not your story to tell." "No," Louise agreed. "My story is learning to live whole, and I'm still writing it." She left the thornwood. Davian waited at the forest's edge, and they walked back to the palace together, hand in hand, connected but not dependent, whole but not perfect. Learning, always learning, how to love without losing themselves. Winter returned. Snow fell, and Louise stood at the palace window again 1 year later, full circle watching the world turn white. Davian came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She leaned back into him, felt the bond humming between them, felt her wolf stirring contentedly in her chest, felt whole and broken and healing all at once. "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that they tell you breaking curses is where stories end. The hero wins. The beast retreats. Roll credits. But that's not where it ends at all. No? No." She turned in his arms, looked up at him. "That's where you begin to learn what freedom actually costs, what love actually requires, what wholeness actually means. And what does it mean? It means choosing vulnerability every day, risking loss for the sake of connection, being brave enough to need someone even though they might leave, being strong enough to be broken and still keep loving. That sounds exhausting." "It is," she smiled, "but it's also the only thing that makes us real." He kissed her forehead. "Gentle. Sure. Present. I love you," he said. Not for the first time, not for the last time, just because it was true. "I know," she pressed closer. "I love you too. Even though it scares me. Even though you might leave. Even though nothing lasts forever. Even though," he agreed. They stood at the window as snow fell around the palace, two people learning to be whole together. It wasn't perfect. It was uncomfortable, more often than not. But it was real, and real, Louise had learned, was worth every risk. In fairy tales, curses break and stories end. In life, you just learn to curse, in a language you understand. And, Louise? She'd learned to speak fluently,